Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, Senate Bill 1113 is a simple bill that says if a registrar fails to timely perform a duty imposed on the registrar under Subchapter B of Chapter 16 of the Election Code, the Secretary of State may withhold funds administered and distributed by the Secretary of State. But if they do end up performing it within 30 days, then they can get their money. With that, I move passage.
Mr. Turner, do you have an amendment? Do you want to offer the amendment?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to ask the bill author a question about his bill.
The gentleman yield for questions.
Yes.
Gentleman yields.
Thank you, Representative Cain. So what's the bill's definition of timely? It's my understanding to be a timely removal of voters from the rolls. Is that right?
Well, several sections of the code speak to when they must perform those duties.
Okay, so
depending on the section of code, if it says 10 days, blank, whatever that is, that would be, if they're beyond that, that would be not timely.
Okay, so it's different timing based on different reasons for removal?
Yeah, well, the duty, depending on which that duty is, so whether it's to remove deceased persons or something else, the code specifies what that timeline is, and so that would be if they fail to timely perform that duty.
So I know we've had another bill that we passed out of the House this session, I think changed the requirement on a deceased person to be removed from to 10 days. Is my memory correct on that? Is that what the bill did? I think it was Mr. Bell.
7 days.
Changed it to 7 days, okay. And so under your bill, 1113, Senate Bill 1113, in that case, if a deceased voter is not removed from the rolls within 7 days, assuming that other bill passes, then what would happen?
Well, according to this bill, they may withhold certain funds. However, under subsection B, you'll see that the Secretary of State shall distribute those funds if the registrar performs that duty not later than 30 days after the funds were withheld. And so there's a way for them to get them by doing what the legislature has commanded them to do.
So they can cure the violation, if you will, within 30 days of having their funds withheld? Is that?
Yeah, I think cure's an accurate description.
Okay. So how does the Secretary of State determine if a county or an election administrator is complying with the law under this bill?
Well, the bill doesn't speak to that.
Right. So
I assume they're giving. Well,
how would the Secretary of State know when to withhold funds? What's the process for determining if funds need to be withheld?
Well, I assume they're provided some form of notice whether they're performing their job, and there are things that they're required to report certain things to the Secretary of State to let them know they've done that job, and so I guess they'll be able to know based on whether they're informed timely enough of whether they've done their job.
Well, so I mean, does the Secretary of State proactively try to do an audit or something, or I mean, what is the process by which the Secretary of State would say, oh, well, this county has not removed deceased voters from the rolls in a timely manner, therefore I'm going to withhold funding to that elections department? What is the process by which they would make that determination?
Well, I thought I answered that one for you. I don't work for the Secretary of State's office, so under this exact issue.
I understand, but it's your bill. So I think all the members need to be clear what the mechanism is by which our counties could potentially lose elections funding under this bill by, potentially a mistake. And I understand you're trying to make sure that there's not a mistake made, but what is the process by which they would lose that funding?
Well, I don't know if it's anything about a mistake, but if they fail to timely do something, and I assume they're notified by some mechanism, and I'm not going to sit here and discuss what that mechanism may be, but if they're notified that the registrar has failed to perform a duty, which would be a duty imposed by law that we imposed upon them, then they can withhold those funds, and if they then perform that duty within 30 days, they can get the funds. It's really simple.
Okay, so they would be notified by a mechanism that you're not prepared to describe or not aware of what that would be?
I didn't write this bill. I'm carrying it, and I can discuss the contents on this bill. Within the four corners, I can talk to you about that.
But there's not a mechanism by which the Secretary, I'm just trying to make sure I understand clearly, there's not a mechanism by which the Secretary of State can make a determination if a county is in compliance with this bill.
I'm not advised of that answer. I mean, there are things that registrars are supposed to...
Okay, so you're not aware of any mechanism?
No, I didn't say that. I said there are things from my reading of the election code and sitting on that committee of seeing that the registrar informs the Secretary of State of certain things. So I'm giving you a hypothetical of how they could be informed.
So when you say the registrar, you mean the county registrar?
Yes. Local registrars.
Okay. So the county registrar would self-report to the Secretary of State?
There are requirements that they report things, yes, sir.
Okay. And in so doing, then the Secretary of State could determine that, the county registrar hasn't properly removed ineligible voters from the rolls? Is that?
I'm really not understanding why you're seeing this as such a complex thing. They have a duty imposed by law to do a job. If they don't do it, we should make them do it.
Right, but I just trying to understand how the Secretary of State is going to be able to know if they did it or not. That's all I'm asking.
I'm sure there's plenty of ways to do that. You can do it through a Public Information Act request or some kind of report or litigation or some affidavits sent. Reports on voter fraud are allowed to be done by people under the election code to the Secretary of State. There's a lot of ways.
So basically, it's relying on citizen complaints. Is that
No, I just gave you a hypo of how they could be informed.
I'm sorry?
There's also reports that registrars must submit to the Secretary of State's office.
Well, let's move on. So the bill obviously is focused on the failure to remove or cancel a voter registration. Is there a similar penalty in the bill for a voter registrar who fails to add new voters in a timely manner, so that those new voters are on the rolls in order to participate in an election?
I mean, I think you can see that the bill doesn't speak to that.
Well, I'm just asking yes or no. Does it do that? Is there a penalty for failing to add voters to the rolls?
There certainly could be if there is a duty imposed by law on the registrar to add new voters.
Is that in your bill?
I'm not see that in the bill, but if an existing law that exists, then that could be part of what this bill does.
So this bill is focused solely on removing voters, not making sure that new eligible voters are added.
No, this bill's focus is literally when you read A, if a registrar fails to timely perform a duty imposed on the registrar under subchapter B. That's literally, so we'd have to go look at subchapter B to know what it does.
Do you think the bill perhaps should address also the failure to timely add new registered voters to the rolls?
Why not?
Okay,
I'm not opposed to that concept. The question is whether that's germane to this bill or that's a subject under subchapter B of chapter 16 of the election code.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.